product is intentionally made worse to meet the demands of stupid consumers. Story 1AW came out with a third-pounder burger in response to McDonald's quarter-pounder. At the same price, it won in taste tests but flopped once released because most customers thought that 14-pound weighed more than 13-pound, since 4 is a bigger number than 3. Story 2, not sure if this is what you are after, but cake mixes, they can make ones that don't actually require eggs or oil to be added. But studies showed that women felt it was closer to homemade if you had to add 3 ingredients. 3 was the magic number that made it feel like less of a cheat. So now we all have to crack 3 eggs and measure out oil, because a focus group in the 70s wanted cake mixes to be harder, so they felt more homemade. I roll. Story 3, not a product, but the sale of products. Everything has to end in a 9 instead of even dollars, and things are perpetually on sale. To make people think they're getting deals, J.C. Penney tried, and hilariously failed, at simplifying the shopping with fair and square. Instead of everything always being on sale with sales and coupons, they'd give the even price of what the sale would be. Sales dropped sharply. People would rather buy a pair of Arizona jeans MSRP at $44.99, 25 off with an additional 15 off, and a 10 off coupon from Sunday's paper, instead of buy it fair and square priced at 25. Story 4, CVT transmissions. First ones would smoothly change the gear ratio, keeping the engine at optimal RPM and providing continuous acceleration. But customers missed the feel of the sawtooth acceleration of traditional gear changes, with the gaps between each gear, so manufacturers had to simulate that with software. Story 5, some things that have been bothering me. Vacuum cleaners intentionally made louder, because people think the louder, the more powerful. Also, they intentionally waste energy because people buy the ones with the most watts. Dish soap made to produce tons of foam, because people think more foam cleans better, even though dishwashing would likely be easier without all that foam getting everywhere. Story 6, the shuffle button on iTunes was originally as random as computers can get for the most part. People complained that it wasn't random enough. Apple made it less random, so it appeared more random. Story 7, movies. Oftentimes, they tack on a needless love story. And if a movie doesn't follow the same basic story arc, with a huge dramatic conclusion, it's not going to be greenlit. Story 8, clothing and shoes. To find anything even remotely neutral-looking, functional, and comfortable, you have to wade through a sea of unnecessary decorations and rhinestone-encrusted buffoonery. Story 9, Grey Goose vodka. Initially, the product was selling at a standard rate, until they jacked the price of the bottle up and made it really tall, so the only place it could be stored was on the top shelf. People saw a tall, expensive bottle on the top shelf and assumed it was better than it was and pay much more for it. Story 10, politicians. My friend's dad works in lobbying and says in his experience they're all very smart people. They just have to pander to dumb people to get votes. Story 11, women's clothing. I like my clothes to last, so I tend not to shop at bargain places like, say, Primark. 3 for a t-shirt, 5 a dress or top, 7 a slightly better dress, 12 jeans because I find they go bobbly in the wash very quickly and they fade, but then I realized H&M, Zara, Mango, New Look, Next, River Island all were doing the same thing. The seams come apart after 3 wears, the fabric fades and bobbles. I've started to see things lose their elasticity and shape, which I've not seen before, yet my husband's got Zara, Mango, and H&M clothes that have lasted years. He doesn't wash them on the delicate cycle in a little delicate bag. He hurls them in at 40 for the full couple-hour wash, and they come out pristine, no fading, no bobbling. His jeans are 13 years old. Mine lost their shape after 4 weeks. Same brand. I wanted some knitted cotton stuff for a particularly cold winter. I can't bear that itchy knitted acrylic or polyester. Men's department, full of knit cotton, women's none. Even high-end brands were selling polyester knitwear, alas. I can't shop in menswear. I'm too small. I guess they feel that women change their clothes so often that they don't need to last. That women won't wear the same top for 5, 6, 7 years, so it doesn't need to last that long. ITLL be bagged up for charity or thrown in the trash before it reaches its 5-wash lifespan. But this saddens me. When I have an item, I end up saving it for best, because I know I'm only going to get to wear it 5 or 6 times before it bobbles to death and becomes can't wear it in public wear. I have a burgundy blouse that lost its shape on the 4th or 5th wear, now looks really weird, and had to retire a green tunic top thing after it faded. So bad it looks like off-white. 3 wears, TDLR, women's wear is considered disposable, and they don't make any effort to make items long-lasting, as they feel that's not what customers want. Story 12, I have a friend in Formula One who told me that recently they have put titanium plates attached to the back of many, if not all, of the cars. He said they try to provide a vague technical reason, but really the plates are popular because titanium creates sparks, so the car looks cooler. Anything to get people to look at the sponsors, I guess. Story 13. This is probably common knowledge by now. But when Microsoft initially released the Xbox 360, they knew about the defect that caused the red rings of death. It was an intentional decision to go ahead and release it without solving the issue first to beat the PS3 to market. It worked for a while, as the 360 outsold the PS3 for a few years. It is still surprising, though, that even after release, they waited so long to fix the issue because they started losing a fair amount of revenue due to warranty and replacements. Story 14. After years of using DSLRs, I bought my first point-and-shoot camera for a hunting trip to Alaska. That thing had a dozen stupid modes that no one would ever find useful, yet not a bit of manual control over shutter speed and aperture. Story 15. Pickup trucks. Now they all have 4 doors and short beds, cartoonishly bloated proportions, and overly aggressive, douchebag styling that's embarrassing to anyone with adult sensibilities. Story 16. Phones. People want high-quality phones. What do we get? 4K screens, dual cameras, and fingerprint scanners for what? Playing Clash Royale and Pokemon Go. Story 17. Windex. It used to cut through grease, soap residue, and whatnot, leaving a streak-free shine. Then they made it green. Now it barely budges grease. It smears soap, and when you're done, you have more streaks than glass. Story 18. McDonald's French fries. Just listen to Malcolm Gladwell's podcast, and apparently the product was far superior prior to 1990. Prior to that, the product was fried in beef tallow, but they caved to a single activist on a saturated fat crusade. Would love to have tasted the fries. Well, I did, but was too young to remember. Story 19. The Star Trek reboot movies. Star Trek has always been about exploration and overcoming obstacles through intellect and cooperation. Starfleet officers are competent, diversely trained individuals, still capable of working in groups, but science and dialogue are boring. Competent protagonists over the age of 25 make moviegoers feel inferior. So the reboots have everyone scream and shoot their way through every situation. Plots revolve around accidental success. And God, does Kirk get the kicked out of him constantly? It's like someone wrote a decent new sci-fi franchise and the producers decided to swap all the names with ones from Star Trek. Story 20. I had a chemical engineering professor in college who would rant about how he had worked for years to make dry laundry detergent, the powder stuff, so that it was easier to store, ship, etc. Then it turned out people preferred to buy liquid detergent because they felt like it would work better. They literally just wanted to buy extra water. SMH. Story 21. Microtransactions in games. They cut pieces out of games and sell them as DLC and microtransactions because there are stupid people who will pay for them. Story 22. I heard that Harley-Davidson motorcycles are intentionally built in a certain way that causes them to be less efficient than a similar Japanese-made motorcycle. This is because some people really like the roar and the rumble of a Harley, even if it needlessly eats through more fuel. Some take the next step and mock the Japanese-made motorcycle for its whining engine, despite the fact it's just as fast and just as powerful in some cases, faster and more powerful. Story 23. A scratch guard in UK was discontinued because consumers don't understand negative numbers. Story 24. Transmissions. CVTs, continuous variable transmissions. Transmissions that don't need to shift gears have been around for quite some time and have been proven, without question, to optimize power delivery and fuel efficiency by keeping the car revving at a speed where it makes the most power. But consumers hate the feeling of their car never shifting. To them, it makes the car feel doggish, and the sound of the engine at a relatively constant RPM feels so different than what most are used to. So car companies have basically and purposely ruined CVTs by making them shift and move through the power band, which almost entirely eliminates the whole point of the CVT. Story 25. Movies. BAM has made American moviegoers desire objectively terrible movies. The day I realized Mad Max sold worse than Fast and The Terrible 17 is a day I truly lost faith in humanity. But Dasman, I just want a movie for the fight scenes. Okay, cool, you should watch The Raid 2. It's a super good action movie I just watched it for the car chases. Oh cool, so Baby Driver just came out and Mad Max Fury Road exists. And have you ever seen Bullet? I think you would really. Watches Transformers Rise of Return of the Profit Margin. The Reckoning Me. Drinks heavily. Story 26. Investments. In order to find clients, you can't offer them a complex strategy that professionals construct. You sell them some mainstream stock that they know, and pray it goes up so you can eventually convince them that you are a professional. Story 27. Febreze. It started out unscented and was intended to cover up bad smells. Consumers didn't get it, so they added some scent, and now it sells like hotcakes. I would have loved something that covered up bad smells and didn't smell like a French whorehouse itself. Story 28, I worked as a front-end developer for an ISP. I did mostly online troubleshooting and support flows. When a customer typed in their credentials and we analyzed their connection, the analysis took between 600 milliseconds and 1,800 milliseconds, roughly a half to 2 seconds. We had to show the analysis in progress animation for 8 seconds because users didn't believe in the result of the 0 SIXS1. Story 29, pretty much everything on Black Friday. You are not buying that 800 TV for 450 because the manufacturer just decided to waive their profit margin. They're likely still making exactly what they were making before in terms of profit. They've just made a special production run using lower quality parts and processes, reducing the cost to manufacture and increasing the likelihood of earlier failure. Story 30, light bulbs. We had the technology to make light bulbs that last a good long time years ago, but a collection of light bulb manufacturers created a manufacturing cartel based around them to control the production of light bulbs and take control of the market. The cartel is no more, but I'm pretty sure all the manufacturers are still making inferior bulbs to keep up sales. Story 31, I was once told that when Bang & Olufsen introduced their beautifully designed audio systems to the US market that sales were poor. The solution was to put fake veneer on them. Story 32, I've heard quieter vacuum cleaners worked just as well and customers perceive them as less effective than conventional loud AF vacuums. Could have been a corporate excuse to not invest in R&D and materials, but it sounds believable. Heard the same about bubbles and soap. They do nothing. We're just a byproduct we got used to seeing, but I haven't tried to verify. Story 33, most car models aren't offered with manual transmissions anymore in the US because no one learns to drive them, which sucks because they're more fun. Story 34, not a product, so much as a way to sell them aspirational marketing. Apple really pioneered this, or at least made it mainstream. It's when, instead of selling the product or why it is good, you sell a lifestyle and heavily imply that the product will fit into that or help you obtain that. Car adverts have totally run with this now. If you dig out old car adverts on YouTube, they talk about power and independent suspension or the fuel economy and safety. Nowadays, it's all shots of a happy family enjoying a holiday and a dog and all hopping in their people carrier, or an attractive young person blasting down mountain roads with uplifting music. 90s BWM 3 Series advert, 2015 BMW 1 Series advert. Story 35, anything with sodium lauryl sulfate, also known as SLS. It is used in many toothpaste, soap, and shampoo to give them the ability to foam up. It is also a known irritant, with some people experiencing irritation and clogged pores on their face body because of its inclusion. Story 36, vanity sizing. Clothing companies want you to feel better about buying their clothes, so they lower the numbers on everything, or they have some crazy idea about what beauty is and raise the size numbers, so certain people won't buy anything. I wish a size 5 could just universally be a size 5. Story 37, Windows 10, I can't update anytime with a 1 megabit per second connection. Oh, I can set my connection as metered. Then why is the update still the ANG commercial radio? Story 38, the SAT was recently changed to match the ACT's policy of not penalizing wrong answers. I work in test prep, and we used to teach kids how and when to guess on the SAT, and now we just tell them to make sure every bubble is filled in. The reason they got rid of it is that the ACT had passed them a market share, and kids were afraid of the guessing penalty, because that made the test seem harder. Of course, it's a norm reference test, meaning the scores are based on performance, as compared to all other test takers, so the test can't get meaningfully easier or harder. What it can do, and what it did with this change, is get less accurate. Story 39, laptop screens. Before the switch to widescreen displays, many laptops had close to or better than 1080p displays already. These days, so many laptops come with 720p or 900p displays, where in the past they have had at worst a 1024 by 768. While many had 1280x 102, 41400x 1050 displays, and better ones had 1600 by 1200. Now, it's near impossible to find anything better than 1080p until you're shelling out big bucks for a 4K display on a laptop. While this might be fine for your average consumer Facebooking and YouTubing, this shift has really sucked for writers and programmers using laptops, since the reduction in horizontal lines means less text can be fit on screen at any given time. Story 40, apparently online financial transactions can happen instantly, but consumers didn't have confidence in them, so they built in a processing time or delay. It's completely unnecessary. Story 41, the Mini. Whoever made the coupe needs to be fired. We also don't need the Clubman and a 4-door Mini. Stupid people asking for a bigger Mini. Minis were meant to be small cars, you stupid idiots. Story 42. I would like to maim all the people who make me have to click a button every time I want to use my sat-nav, to acknowledge that I'll still be able to concentrate on driving. Except they probably already maimed themselves, the stupid. Story 43. Shaving cream in a can. A little while ago I switched to DE shaving because it was so much cheaper. To my surprise, the shave quality was far better than expensive cartridges, but what blew me away was the quality of shave soap. I went all out and got a kit with a brush and bowl. I was shocked at how much slicker the soap was. I was even more blown away when I got a quality soap. Can cream is foamy and dramatic. It is also touted as far more convenient, but in the end it isn't nearly as slick as a legit shave soap you whip up with a brush. My wife has recently made the soap switch and is amazed at the quality difference. Truth be told, it's cheaper too. Unless you start collecting all the different scents. Yes, this is a thing. If you want to save money and get a better shave, make the switch and take a little time to learn the techniques. Your skin will thank you. Story 44. Television. Years ago, we had thoughtful, high-minded programming like Twilight Zone, etc. Now we have reality trash that seems to make society dumber and shallower. Story 45. Hopefully I'm not late to the party. Anyway, TV stations don't show the programs they are named for. History Channel is aliens and antiques now. Animal Planet is people building stuff. Food Network is competitions. What happened to the days where the stations put on relevant programming? Story 46 might not be exactly what you're looking for, but the Smith-Wesson internal lock on revolvers did it as a PR move to get on board with the Clinton-era gun control push, hoping to play nice with gun enthusiasts and meet the demands of non-gun enthusiasts. Ended up almost tanking the company, and, as I recall, dropped their sales by some huge margin. Story 47. Refrigerators and other appliances from the 50s to 70s were so good that a lot still work to this day, killing resales. Appliance companies has to start making them with cheaper parts, so they would break, so they could sell more units. Story 48. Back when I used to work on Nintendo DS games, I learned that saving your game to the cart is almost instantaneous for 95 of games, since the data to be written is only a few KB. The programmers would actually add a now saving progress bar pop-up that would take maybe 2 to 3 seconds because focus groups and QA testers wouldn't believe the game had saved properly without one. This applies to about 95 of game saves. The bar tracks nothing, it just runs on a timer. The only thing that progress bar is tracking the progress of is wasted time. Story 49. Okay. The mechanical engineering school that I went developed a new kind of press, using different alloys, using a different structure. It was much lighter than a normal press for that application. They did present to market this product, expecting to make a deal to license the technology. All the market said, oh, this is too light. It won't stand. It will never sell cows. The market need a heavy-duty machine. This is good for the school that uses lightly. Then they decided to have this solved. They changed the mold to be closed and poured concrete inside. Now, it is a heavy-duty, heavy-looking, and very heavy press. Idiots. Story 50. Xbox One. We could have had a Steam-like interface with pressure put on driving down the cost of digital console games. Instead, we get a lumbering heap of that seems inferior to the PlayStation 4 in every way. Why are digital console games still more expensive than hard copies? It makes no sense at all to me. Story 51. Flat-screen TVs. I had a backlight go out on one and was told it would cost half of what I paid to replace. I felt disgusted when putting it out with the trash, and I hope my town actually recycles. Story 52. Cake mix. No, seriously, talking Betty Crocker and all the rest, those box cake mixes, you know how to make them, you just add eggs and water. Originally, you didn't need to add eggs, and they can still be made that way. When cake mixes first came out, people felt they were cheating and that it wasn't really baking if all you did was add water and shove it in the oven. Dried powdered egg is a thing. It's called meringue powder. They intentionally leave it out of the mix to make you do more work because stupid people literally wouldn't buy the mixes otherwise. Story 53. I think someone already mentioned computers, but specifically gaming computers and laptops. If you want a gaming PC on the range of 1,000 to 1,500, it's going to have a high-end processor and a medium low-end graphics card, which will result in less than efficient gaming performance. It's basically the equivalent of having an electric Ferrari, but only charging it with you pedaling while you drive it. Story 54. A lot of things with random number generators. If a video game, for example, gives you a 98 chance to hit an enemy and you miss, you're likely to cry bullshit, even if you've already hit 50 times in a row with the same probability. And likewise, if an enemy only has an 11 chance to hit and he hits you, you're going to feel bad and ITLL feel unfair despite the chance being reasonably high. So a lot of games like Fire Emblem purposefully fudge the numbers by making high-chance events even higher than they should be and low-chance events even lower than they should be. Story 55 Game of Thrones. It was really good for a few seasons, but then they started dumbing the series down as to not confuse people who only watch the show. It's still okay, but nowhere near as good as it should have been. Story 56 What you see is what you get software as a lawyer. Using Microsoft Word is absolutely horrifying, especially if you want to make edits in over 400 documents. And those edits are not the same, but rather 3 to 4 different edits across all documents, and not in chronological order. Python scripts save the day for me. It could detect certain paragraphs and replace them across all 400 within 15 minutes, a job which otherwise normally takes half the day of the firm. I just wish we could move to LaTeX or something. It requires initial training, but is so much better and efficient. Edit not as worrying as me not being able to format this post as justified rather than left aligned. Story 57 Video games. I've noticed this most with the Total War and Elder Scrolls Fallout series. The mechanics are more streamlined, so you don't have to think about the consequences of potentially up a character, and the games themselves feel a lot easier and are devoid of content. Story 58 Apple in general. I want to know which requested AirPods, like seriously, who the wanted them. Just use a Bluetooth headset and get your made by Apple. So it must be Get Out of Here went downhill when Steve died. Story 59, not necessarily worst, but many kinds of soap don't naturally have foam, so it's added so that people feel like it's working even though it's useless. The added effervescence is only for looks, but otherwise people would believe the soap is expired or something. Story 60 Computers are held back significantly by backwards compatibility. The general architecture used in modern desktop and laptop computers is still based off the original IBM PC for 1981. The CPU architecture is even older, with x86 dating back to 1978. Most software from the past 30 years can still run on a modern computer. Computers could be faster, more energy efficient, easier to program, and just generally better if we redesign them from the ground up. Story 61 Gas cans. It's a mixture of stupid consumers and stupid politicians. All the new anti-spill makes gas spill exponentially more, and all the nozzles are made out of cheap plastic that breaks if you look at it wrong. I just bought two, 5-gallon steel cans with funnel spouts, and 4 genuine NATO 5-gallon gas cans. Don't get the cheap ones. My gas storage problems are now behind me. Story 62 The company that owns SunChips created a chip bag that is completely biodegradable, but people hated it because it was too loud. Story 63 Not exactly stupid or even consumer, but back in WW2 the Bren gun, the standard light machine gun of the British Army, was so accurate that the shooters had a tendency to take out targets one by one like a sniper, which while effective was not what it was designed for, and very probably fatal if they were being charged by the enemy. So it was redesigned slightly to make it more inaccurate, so as to encourage the shooter to spray shots in acres like it was supposed to do. Story 64 Phones. Stupid consumers want big, gigantic LOLHD residential screens and thin as devices, so you get a phone that is so big you can't use it with one hand, with pixels smaller than the human eye can detect, which requires a massive GPU to render, eating the out-of-paper-thin battery. Hey, race an idea. It's okay if the thing is a cm thick. It's okay if the screen is only 5:5. It's okay if it only has 720p resolution. It's okay if the battery lasts more than 12 hours. Story 65 Hamilton Beach. Bought a toaster oven 3 years ago, but although there were 2 rack slots, it only came with 1 rack. I knew this when I bought it, but I wanted the second rack anyway. So I called them up to see if I could buy one. They sent one for free. Also, the toaster oven is still fantastic after using it basically every day for 3 years. Story 66 Ford cars and trucks have gauges temperature, pressure, etc. that don't show real, actual values. Instead, if the value they're reading is within what is considered a normal range, they show a static value. For instance, oil pressure will vary greatly depending on temperature of the engine RPM, etc. But if the vehicle is equipped with an oil pressure gauge, it will show a steady 60 psi or similar value as long as the real value doesn't get out of bounds. My understanding is that this was done because people who don't understand engines were calling into Ford's customer support thinking they had problems when in fact the engine was functioning normally. Ford decided to move to these idiot gauges similar to idiot lights, but in gauge form so that they wouldn't have to field so many calls from confused users. Story 67 I remember reading about McDonald's making a 13-pounder, but PPL thought it was less than 14-pound because 34 due sales were poor, and they went back to a less weight burger. PPL don't get fractions. Story 68 Suits and ties. Some are made cheaply with shoddy construction and bad materials to cater to those men who need them for something and have to get dressed up. Story 69 Steve Jobs paid magazine's reviewers to downplay the gaming capabilities of Macs, which I believe was actually better than PC at the time, to create an image of professionalism yada 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 worked. Wake Up Febreze air freshener was originally made to eliminate bad odors and had no smell. This didn't sell that well, so the marketing team then switched to linking it to pleasant smells and good cleaning habits, which resulted in a massive increase in sales. That said, I'm sure they have variants without added perfume as well. Just thought it was interesting. Story 70 Grey Goose Vodka. It is bad vodka. At its inception, it was sold as a step above really bad vodka in normal-looking bottles. Big surprise, nobody bought it. Turns out there wasn't much of a market for just better than really bad vodka. So Grey Goose hires a smart guy to rebrand. Smart guy says, increase the price a bit and put it in unreasonably tall bottles. Everyone is baffled, but they do it. Soon the profits soar. Grey Goose becomes well known as good vodka. Soon they can charge even more. Know why it worked? The bottle is too tall for any shelf, but the top one at liquor stores and bars. It has to be placed alongside all the good vodka. People associate top shelf with good and liquor. Moral of the story is don't buy Grey Goose. Story 71. I heard somewhere that tech companies intentionally make their product high quality, but have short lifespans in order for you to buy more of their products. Story 72. This is true for the most part. A great trader murders the market until he is trading with a massive amount of money. At that point, it gets a lot harder, but at that point, the trader is very wealthy. Story 73, the COD franchise. Too many people complained it was hard to get a nuke in MW2, so they made it easy for everyone to be able to get kill streak rewards regardless of how terrible at the game they were. Story 74, Apple, the electronics company. Seriously, my friend says he only buys iPhones because Android is too complicated and unnecessary. New iPhone has no headphone jack. Story 75, cookie warnings on websites. Cookies are both completely harmless and completely necessary, so stop warning about them. iPhones, I think, it would explain why they keep iOS as simplistic and minimal as possible and add functionality in only the slowest increments, such as maybe one new feature each new iteration of iOS. The phone hardware doesn't need to be high-end if 4-year-old hardware can run your software just fine, thus meeting demands of less intelligent consumers who just want something easy to use and increasing their own profit margin in one move. Story 76, tasteless cod liver oil. Customers thought it was not working as well when it did not taste bad anymore. So the product failed spectacularly, so the company went back to selling foul-tasting oil. Story 77, McDonald's French fries. The recipe was changed back in the 90s to be healthier, and now they aren't as tasty. I strongly recommend last week's episode of Revisionist History. Story 78, I worked for a TV production company that did a lot with hidden cameras. At one point, the HD quality was so good, they had to run the recordings through a VHS recorder in order to make the quality worse, because people complained about the recordings being fake. Story 79, I remember they had to add parameters to the iPhone's randomize button for music, because people thought the completely random setting wasn't random enough. Story 80, the shuffle function on the old iPods would sometimes cause 2 or more songs by the same artist to be played consecutively. Customers complained that didn't feel random to them, so Apple made the shuffle function less of a shuffle function. Story 81, not because people are stupid, but instead because they're creatures of habit. I read about tests on a car that had only one pedal, not the 2 to 3 we've had for 100 years. You accelerated with your toe, but braked with your heel. Stomping down with your heel is a natural reflex. Moving your foot from gas to brake is not. The car was safer and easier to drive, but once you drove it, you could not go back to the old style. I wonder how many things are intentionally broken because the transition is too dangerous. Story 82, I used to change a burned bulb myself on my old cars. Now, I have to take it to a garage. I used to not worry about headlights because they were made out of crystal. Now I have to polish them every few months. Story 83, a couple airsoft brands that used to be pretty good started selling well at Walmart, and then Walmart demanded them to make cheaper guns to keep profit up. Obviously, they cut quality control. Story 84, video game consoles. Look, I'm not being a PC elitist. My first console was a SNES, which I got brand new back in the day. But look at the Nintendo Switch. There's no reason for it to have hardware that's outperformed by a decently priced gaming tablet. You spend $400 on a PS4 or Xbox One. For $100 or so more, you could build a PC that easily outperforms both. A friend of mine with no PC building experience successfully built his first one simply by watching YouTube tutorials in under an hour. Story 85, not exactly answering the question, but is a problem that is entirely caused because of people. Now, this might be politically triggering, so you have been warned. I believe that nuclear energy is the best type of energy that is currently available. We can produce lots of it when we actually need it, and it is not dependent on the weather, and with the proper precautions, has very little impact on the environment. However, because people are scared of nuclear energy, very few reactors are being built nowadays, and we instead use outdated, old reactors that are more prone to failure. IRC. The incident in Fukushima was entirely preventable had the cooling cube, something like that, saw in a documentary some years ago, had been upgraded and wasn't so old. So technically, nuclear reactors and their facilities are not being maintained, upgraded, built, because it's political suicide for anyone to say they should. TLDR, IMO nuclear energy is made more dangerous because the masses are afraid of it. So instead of making sure it is all safe and good, we have to let the old tech last as long as possible. Story 86. I can't believe I don't already see it at the top, but shampoo. A long time ago, they figured out how to make a much more efficient shampoo that you only had to use a little bit of, but people felt like their hair wasn't getting clean if the soap didn't lather and bubble up, so no one wanted it. And that's why we have giant bottles of more expensive, less efficient shampoo. Story 87. Betty Crocker used to use powdered eggs, just add water, but people didn't feel like they were really bikining, so they removed the egg and made people add an egg. Story 88. Magic the Gathering cards. The New World Order served to dumb down the game, as well as the current direction of design, prioritizing smushing shitty creatures together. Story 89. A lot of car engines only exist to encourage buyers to spend more on the better option. BMW used to sell a 318i, a 320i, and a 325i here in Europe. The 320i had the same power as the 318i, but used the same amount of fuel as the 325i. As an engineering solution, it made no sense whatsoever. But people bought it so they wouldn't feel like they were buying the cheapest car in the range. And its existence encouraged more people to cough up for the most expensive option since it was priced closer to the 325i than the 318i. These practices still exist across all vehicle manufacturers.